Dim the lights and let the world fall away. You're entering Dreadloop, Creepypasta, where the silence feels heavier, and every story pulls you deeper into the dark. If you enjoy these dark stories, subscribe, and return when the night feels longest. Now settle and breathe slowly, and listen closely. Tonight's tale begins now. On my third night at the gas station, a man went into the bathroom and never came out. His car stayed running until morning. I heard the door close. I heard the lock turn. 20 minutes later, the bathroom was empty. The water was running. The Snickers wrapper was on the floor by the toilet. His car was still in the lot, with the driver's door open. The bathroom key was hanging back on the hook beside the register. I never saw him come back out. That was the first one. By the time I left 4 months later, I had lost count. This is what happened in those 4 months. And what happened after, in the city. When I thought I'd left it behind, the gas station sat at the corner of US Highway 385 and a county road on a stretch of West Texas between Fort Stockton and Marathon. The road runs north to south through scrub and mesa and a kind of light that gets very flat in the afternoons and very black at night. There are no streetlights between the two towns. There's almost nothing between the two towns, period. Just the gas station, a closed-down feed store about 10 miles south of it, and the occasional rancher's gate. The station had 2 pumps, under a metal canopy that buzzed slightly when the lights came on. There was a small convenience store, about the size of a 1-car garage, with 3 aisles, a cooler running the back wall, a coffee station up front, and a bathroom at the end of a short hallway behind the cooler. Out back, behind a chain link fence, there was a small mobile home that the owner provided with the job, and a propane shed and a dusty patch of dirt where rabbits sometimes came at dawn. The owner was a man named Russ Wutley. Russ lived in San Angelo, 200 miles east, and managed the place mostly by phone. He came out once a month to do payroll, restock the cooler, and check the pumps. He was 60-something, gray, polite. He paid in cash. He didn't ask a lot of questions, and he didn't expect a lot of answers. I took the job in March, the spring. I turned 20-4. I want to tell you briefly why. I'd been living in Alpine, going to community college part-time, and I had this idea, this very specific, slightly stubborn idea, that I was going to move to Austin in the fall and apply to art school. The University of Texas had a program. Other places had programs. I'd been drawing since I was 8 years old. I'd been told my whole life I was talented at it. In the slightly polite way people say talented when they mean, please keep doing this thing because it makes you bearable to be around. The problem was money. Austin was expensive. The school was expensive. I needed a year, maybe a little less, to save up. The gas station paid $8 an hour, plus the trailer, free. Plus, Russ said, I could keep half the tips from the coffee jar, which I figured would be about another $50 a month. The shift was 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I didn't have to deal with morning rush. I didn't have to deal with anybody, really. The store was mostly empty between 11 and 4. Russ said on the phone, when he was hiring me, honey, you can read books. Study, whatever you want, between customers. The job is mostly being there. I had a younger sister, Carla, in basic training in San Antonio. Our mother lived in Alpine and worked nights at a hospital. Our father had not been in the picture for 15 years. I had a small support system that didn't need much from me. I had a 2003 Toyota Corolla with 190,000 miles on it. I had a sketchbook and a Strathmore pad and a tin of pencils. I told my mother I was going to take the job. She didn't love it. She said it was lonely out there. She said the highway had a bad reputation. I told her every highway in West Texas had a bad reputation. She looked at me for a long time. She said, "You're a smart girl, Mara. You know how to listen. Listen out there." I said I would. I drove to the station on a Sunday afternoon, met Russ, In the parking lot, walked through the store with him, signed paperwork in the trailer. He handed me a single key on a wooden block, the bathroom key, and a ring of 3 other keys. The front door, the back door, the propane shed. He showed me the alarm code. He showed me how to count the till. He gave me a yellow legal pad for the pump sheet. Before he left, he said, "Couple of things. We don't sell beer or wine. We don't have a lottery machine. We don't accept anything bigger than a 50. People come in late at night. Sometimes they're tired. Sometimes they're not all the way okay. Be polite, be quick, don't engage." I nodded. He said, "And if anyone asks for the bathroom key, just hand it to them. Don't follow them back." I nodded. Again, he paused. He said, "If somebody doesn't come back out after a while, just lock up and go to your trailer." I waited for him to say more. He didn't. He got in his truck. He drove east. For the first 2 nights, I didn't think about the bathroom thing at all. The first 2 nights were quiet. A handful of pickup trucks. A long-haul rig that pulled in and idled at the diesel pump for 40 minutes while the driver slept in his cab. A family in a minivan with sleeping kids on their way to El Paso. A couple of teenagers buying chips and Cokes at 1 in the morning, who flirted with me politely and tipped $1. I drank coffee. I drew in my sketchbook. I watched the cars come and go on the highway, sliding through the canopy lights and back out into the dark. I listened to the buzz of the canopy. The cooler hummed. The coffee maker ticked when it dripped fresh. At 6 in the morning, the day shift guy, a man in his late 50s named Hector, who lived in Marathon, pulled in, and we did the handover. And I locked up the till, and I walked back to my trailer, and I slept until 2 in the afternoon. It was peaceful. It was exactly what I had wanted. The third night was the man with the Mayquit Snickers bar. He pulled in at 1:28 a.m. I noted the time on the pump sheet. He drove a maroon 4-door sedan, dusty, Texas plates. He came inside, walked the snack aisle, picked up a Snickers, brought it to the counter, said, "Hi." He paid in cash, a $5, and asked for the bathroom key. I handed him the key on its wooden block. He thanked me. He walked back down the short hallway behind the cooler. I heard the bathroom door close. I heard the latch. I went back to my sketchbook. After about 15 minutes, I noticed I was thinking about him. I don't know why. I had a small uneasy thought. He's been in there a while. And I told myself people sometimes take a long time in gas station bathrooms. That's between them and their digestive systems, and it was none of my business. After 20 minutes, I got up. I walked toward the back of the store. I stopped at the end of the cooler aisle. I called out gently, "Sir, are you all right?" There was no answer. I walked the rest of the way down the hallway. The bathroom door was closed. I knocked. There was no answer. I tried the handle. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The bathroom was a single small room, toilet, sink, a thin rectangular mirror, a soap dispenser. The fluorescent light was on. The water in the sink was running. The Snickers wrapper was crumpled on the tile floor by the base of the toilet. The bathroom was empty. There was no window. There was no other door. I turned the water off. I picked up the wrapper. I dropped it in the small wire bin. I walked back to the counter. The bathroom key on its wooden block was hanging back on the hook beside the register, where it always hung. I had brought the key with me. I knew I had. I remembered the warmth of the wood in my hand on the walk down the hallway. I checked my pockets. The key wasn't in them. The key was on the hook. Outside, in the lot, the maroon sedan sat with its driver's door open. The dome light was on. The keys were still in the ignition. I could hear, very faintly, the chime of the keys in ignition warning, dinning itself out into the dark. I called the sheriff. The deputy who came was named Reyes. He was a big man in his 40s, very calm, with a soft voice and the unhurried way of moving that some men in West Texas have when they've been doing the same job in the same county for a long time. He came in, he looked around. He walked back to the bathroom. He came back. He took my report on a clipboard. He looked at the maroon sedan. He ran the plates. The owner was a man named Donald Whitlock, 58, from El Paso. The car came back as not stolen. Reyes called the El Paso phone number listed in the registration. He talked to a woman, Donald's wife, who said she didn't know where he was. Donald had left El Paso that morning to drive up to Lubbock to see his son. He was supposed to have arrived by midnight. He hadn't called. Reyes told her he'd be in touch. He hung up. He stood for a moment looking at the maroon sedan. Then he turned to me. He said, "Honey, have you been working out here long?" I said, 3 days. He nodded. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. He said, "It happens out here sometimes. The road's a long road. People, they get to a stop, they go inside, they don't come out. We file the report. We talk to the family. We don't tend to find them," I said. "What do you mean they don't come out?" He said, "I mean what I said." I said, "Where do they go?" He looked at me for a long beat. He had very kind brown eyes. He said, "Honey, I don't know. I really don't. I've been doing this for 19 years. I've stopped trying to figure out what I don't know." He paused. He said, "Just when this happens, you call us. We'll come. We'll do the report. The car will sit for 72 hours. If nobody claims it, we'll have it towed to the impound in Fort Stockton. That's the procedure. You don't have to do anything else." He paused again. He said, "And honey, don't go looking. Don't follow them back." I said, "I won't." He nodded. He thanked me for calling. He drove away. The maroon sedan sat in the lot for the next 3 days. The dome light eventually went off when the battery died. Hector, on day shift, helped me push the car off to the side of the lot so it wasn't blocking the pumps. On the 4th morning, a tow truck came and took it away. I never heard from Donald Whitlock's wife. It happened again, 11 days later. A Caldudez, college-aged kid in a beat-up Civic. Around 2 a.m., he bought a bag of Funyuns and a Mountain Dew. He asked for the bathroom key. I handed it over. He went to the back. The bathroom door clicked closed. I started timing it. 15 minutes. 20. I walked back. The bathroom was empty. The Funyuns were on the sink, unopened. The Mountain Dew was on the back of the toilet, unopened. The water was running. I turned the water off. I left the snacks where they were. I walked back to the front. The bathroom key was on the hook. The Civic was in the lot, dome light on. I called Reyes. Reyes came. He took the report. He didn't seem surprised. When he was leaving, I stopped him in the parking lot. I said, "Deputy, how often does this happen?" He looked at the canopy lights for a moment. He said, "Out here, on this stretch, averages out to about 1 every 5-6 weeks. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Other places on the highway have it worse. There's a rest stop south of Sanderson where it's about every other week." I said, "And nobody knows what's happening to them?" He said, "People have theories." I said, "What's yours?" He said, "Mine is that there's parts of this country older than the country, and they don't read English." He almost smiled when he said it. He got in his cruiser. He drove away. I started keeping notes. Not in a journal. Just on the back of a clipboard I kept under the counter, where I tracked the pump sheet. A small column, the date, the time, the car, a few words about the customer, whether they came back out. In my first 30 days, I logged 5 incidents. 5 people who walked to the back of the store and didn't come back. I started to recognize the signs. They were small. The customers who didn't come back were always alone. They were always tired. They almost always asked for the bathroom key. Sometimes they bought something, a candy bar, a bag of chips, a coffee. Sometimes not. They didn't talk much. They didn't make eye contact more than once or twice. They had the slightly wandering, slightly soft attention of people who had been on the road a long time, but you couldn't tell, looking at them, that they wouldn't come back. They looked like everyone else who walked in. I want to be clear about that. Most of the people who came in late at night were also alone, also tired, also looking soft and worn out from a long drive. Most of them used the bathroom. Most of them came back out. It was just that some of them didn't. Around the end of my first month, I met Etta. Etta was a long-haul trucker, mid-60s, white hair, cropped short, strong forearms. She drove a Peterbilt with a sleeper cab, hauled refrigerated produce between San Antonio and Albuquerque, and stopped at the station once a week. On her way west, around 2:30 in the morning. She always bought the same things: a black coffee, a banana, a pack of beef jerky. She tipped $2. She stayed at the counter for about 10 minutes, sometimes more, and we talked while she ate her banana. She had been doing this run for almost 40 years. She had seen 4 owners come and go at this station. She had known every clerk that had worked the night shift since 1991. The third time she came in after I started, she looked at me carefully and said, "How are you doing, honey?" I said, "I'm okay." She kept looking at me. She said, "You've had one happen. I can tell." I said, "How can you tell?" She said, "You watch the door different now. You glance at the back of the store every 20 seconds. You're listening for water running." I said, "I've had 2. She nodded. She broke off a piece of her banana. She said, "You want me to tell you what I know?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I don't know much. I know there are places on this highway that take people. This stop is one of them. There's a rest stop south of Sanderson that's worse. There's a curve on US 67 outside Presidio, where cars sometimes drive off and the bodies don't come back, even when they pull the cars out. I think it's older than this country. I don't think it's evil exactly. I think it's hungry, the way an old place gets hungry, slow." I said, "Why does it take some people and not others?" She said, "I don't know. Some folks think it's that the place picks people who are alone. Some folks think it's people who are ready to disappear. In some way they don't even know about themselves yet. Like the place can smell it on them, that they were already partway gone." She paused. She said, "I've stopped here every week for 40 years, and it has never once tried to take me. I don't know why. Some of us aren't on the menu." I said, "What do I do?" She said, "Don't follow them back. Don't keep their things." And she paused again. She said, "And mind the bell." I said, "The bell?" She pointed up. There was a small brass bell hanging on a leather strap above the front door. It rang when the door opened. It rang when the door closed. I had barely noticed it. She said, "That bell is the difference between this being a stop on the road and this being something else. Long as the bell rings clean every time the door opens, the people who came in are still allowed to leave. If the bell ever stops ringing, if you find it on the floor, or the strap is cut, or it's hanging crooked, somebody's trying to come back out wrong, you hang it back up, right side up. Make sure it rings." I said, "Who told you that?" She said, "A clerk who used to work here in the 80s. Skinny guy named Roland. He told me, and a year later he was the one who didn't come back out of the bathroom." She finished her banana. She got up. She said, "Hang in there, honey. Don't let it spook you. Most of your shifts will be fine. Most of your customers will leave." She put $2 in the tip jar. She walked out. The bell rang clean. After Etta, I watched the bell. It rang every time the door opened. Coming in, going out. I started counting the rings in my head for each customer. 2 for a person who came and left. 1 ring meant somebody had walked in and was still inside. 3 rings was a glitch. Sometimes a customer would push the door, hesitate, push it again, and the bell would ring 3 times before they fully entered. That was fine. It was the hesitation. It wasn't the bell. What I was watching for was a missed ring. For about 3 weeks after I talked to Etta, things were quiet. Then on a Tuesday in late April, around 11 p.m., a man came in and asked me my name. He was middle-aged, tall, thin, neat. He wore a clean white button-down shirt that was tucked into khakis. He didn't look like the usual late-night customer. He didn't look tired. He didn't look like he'd been driving for hours. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a quiet office. He bought a small bottled water. He paid with a credit card that didn't go through. He paid again with a different credit card that went through. He thanked me. As he was about to walk away, he turned back. He said, "What's your name?" I hesitated. I want you to understand what I felt in that hesitation. It was not paranoia. It was not the trained jumpiness of somebody who'd seen weird things at this stop. It was the very small, very certain instinct of a young woman who has spent her entire life being asked her name by men in neutral tones who turn out to want something. I have a way of handling that. I've had it since I was 13, I said brightly. Falsely, I'm Mara, he smiled. The smile was perfectly pleasant. A sound behind me. From the dark beyond the canopy lights, the sound of something walking on the loose gravel of the apron, where the asphalt ended and the dirt lot began. It was not the sound of a person. It was the sound of one foot walking unevenly. A single soft tap on gravel, then a pause, then another. Tap, pause, tap. I turned around. Very slowly, a white sneaker was walking across the gravel. A single white sneaker. Pink laces, a child's sneaker, maybe a women's size 6. The shoe was empty. It was upright. It was placing itself, deliberately, one step at a time, across the gravel toward the front step of the store. I didn't move. I want to tell you, exactly, the speed at which it was moving. It was the speed of an old woman walking, patient, considered, each step about a second long. There was no hurry. There was no aggression. There was, if anything, politeness in the gait. The shoe was approaching me the way a stranger approaches another stranger in a parking lot, slowly, openly, so as not to alarm. It stopped at the front step. It waited. I stood about 10 feet from it, with the phone in one hand and the brass bell in the other. The shoe waited. I want to tell you as honestly as I can what I felt. I felt something old. I felt that the shoe was a part of something, a small ambassador of something larger, and that the something larger was on the other side of the building, behind the cooler, somewhere I could not see, and that it had sent the shoe to ask me a question. I did not know what the question was. I did not know what the answer would have been if I'd known the question. I stood there for what was probably 90 seconds. The shoe did not move. The phone did not ring again. After a while, the shoe seemed to consider. It tilted very slightly forward, the way somebody's foot tilts when they're about to take a step. Then it tilted back, the way somebody's foot tilts when they've decided not to. It rocked just barely twice on the gravel. And then it began to walk again, back the way it had come. Tap, pause, tap, slower than before, almost reluctantly, around the side of the building, past the cooler door, into the dark. I stood there until I couldn't hear it anymore. Then I walked back into the store. I closed the front door. I locked it. I turned the open sign to closed. It was 1:26 a.m. I rehung the bell. I made sure it rang. I went to the counter. I picked up the phone in the lost and found bin, the couple's phone, Hannah's phone, and I held it in my lap. I sat behind the counter with my back to the wall. I sat there for the rest of the shift. The phone rang 4 more times that night. MOM, then Mom, then Dad, then Mom. I didn't answer. When Hector came at 6 in the morning, I unlocked the door and let him in. I told him what had happened in flat sentences. He sat down on a stack of soda crates and listened. When I was done, he didn't say anything for a while. He said, "Mara, "Honey, you should go home." I said, "I am home." I gestured at the trailer out back. He said, "I mean home, your mother's house. For a few days, Russ won't fire you." I shook my head. I said, "I'm done, Hector. I'm not coming back." He nodded. He didn't argue. He said, "I'll tell Russ." He gave me an awkward, gentle hug. He smelled like pipe tobacco and laundry soap. I packed my trailer that morning. By noon I was on the road to Alpine. The Honda Civic with its open driver's door and its backpack on the passenger seat was still in the lot when I drove away. I assume Reyes came. I assumed the Civic got towed. I never asked. I called Hannah's mother 2 days later from a payphone in Marfa. I gave her the phone number for the Brewster County Sheriff's Department. I told her I'd seen her daughter at the gas station around 1 a.m. on Saturday. I didn't tell her about the shoe. I didn't tell her my name. I hung up before she could ask too much. I moved to Austin in September, 3 weeks earlier than I'd planned. I rented a tiny studio in a duplex on the east side, off Cesar Chavez. I enrolled at the university. I'd been admitted in May. Before all this, on a partial scholarship for a portfolio they were generous about. I worked part-time at a bakery in the mornings. I painted in the afternoons. In the evenings I walked the streets of East Austin and looked at all the people, which felt, after 4 months at the gas station, like a kind of healing in itself. I want to tell you that I forgot. I want to tell you that the gas station became a thing in my past, a story I'd tell in 20 years. The way people tell stories about jobs they had when they were young and slightly reckless. I didn't forget. For about 6 weeks, things were good. I slept fine. I painted. I made friends. Then one Tuesday in late October, I worked the morning shift at the bakery, and around 10:30 a.m., a young woman came in. She was about 25. She had a leather messenger bag over her shoulder. She had bleached blonde hair pulled back in a short ponytail. I want to be clear. It was not Hannah. It just looked very faintly the way Hannah might have looked if I'd ever seen Hannah's face. She ordered an iced latte. She paid with a credit card. She stood at the end of the counter while I made the drink. While I steamed the milk, she said, casually, "Where's the bathroom?" And I told her, and she walked back with her drink toward the small hallway at the back of the bakery. I heard the bathroom door close. I heard the latch. I started timing it. 15 minutes. 20:20-5. The morning rush was going. There were people at the counter. I rang up 4 customers. I made 3 lattes. I refilled the napkin dispenser. I refilled the coffee carafe. I tried very hard to act like a normal person who works at a bakery. At 30 minutes, I asked the other barista, a girl named Devon, who was 19 and didn't know me well, to cover the register. I walked back to the bathroom hallway. I knocked on the door. There was no answer. I tried the handle. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The bathroom was empty. The bag was gone. The drink was gone. The light was off. I want you to understand, there is a back door from the bathroom hallway. It opens onto a small alley behind the bakery. I checked the back door. The back door was bolted from the inside. I closed the bathroom door. I walked back to the front. I rang up the next customer. When my shift ended at 2, I walked out the front door of the bakery onto Cesar Chavez. I took 10 steps down the sidewalk. There was a single shoe sitting on the curb between 2 parked cars. A white sneaker. Pink laces. Empty. Upright. Patient. I did not look at it directly. I walked past it. I kept walking until I got to my apartment. I locked the door behind me. I sat on my floor for a while. I never went back to that bakery. I want to tell you about the rest, but it is hard to make it specific, because most of it is small. I changed jobs. I worked at a coffee shop on South Lamar, then at a paint store off East 6th, then at a different coffee shop on Manor Road. Each job, I was careful. I checked the bell over each door. If it was crooked, I straightened it. If there wasn't one, I bought one, a small brass bell on a leather strap, and I asked the owner if I could hang it. Most of them said yes. A few looked at me strangely, but they said yes. I memorized the back exits of every workplace. I never let a bathroom door latch closed if I was the only employee. If a customer asked me my name, I said Sarah. I have not told a customer my real name in 2.5 years. It happened to me twice more in those years. Once at the coffee shop on Manor in the spring of my 2nd year. A man in a gray hoodie who didn't come back from the bathroom. The shoe walked across the patio. I watched it from inside. Once at the paint store on a Saturday afternoon. A woman with a baby in a stroller asked to use the back office bathroom. She left the stroller with the baby in it at the front counter. 20 minutes later, the bathroom was empty. She never came back. The baby was a doll. The stroller was a real stroller. I called the police. The police came. They were not kind. They thought I was lying. The stroller went into evidence. I never heard about it again. After the second time, I started asking around. Carefully. Other people in service jobs. Other women who worked alone late. I found one other person, in 2 years, who knew what I was talking about. A barista in San Marcos who was about my age. She nodded when I described the shoe. She didn't say much. She said, "It happens more than people think. Don't tell people. They don't want to know." I haven't told most people. I haven't told Donnie. Donnie is my partner. We've been together a year. She's an MFA student in painting. She's tall and freckled and patient, and she laughs at things I say in a way that makes me feel like I'm fluent. In 2 languages instead of 1. She's the most ordinary, most miraculous fact of my life. She doesn't know about the shoe. I have come close many times to telling her. I haven't, because I don't know how to tell her without making her watch for it. And once you start watching, you don't stop. I know that. I've been watching for 2.5 years now. I would not wish the watching on anyone. So I keep it to myself. I work at a small gallery now, on Mankaka Road, in the afternoons. In the mornings I paint. The gallery has a bell over the door. I checked it on my first day. It's a beautiful little bell. It rings clean. Most days are ordinary. I went to my sister's wedding in San Antonio last fall. I held my mother's hand at my grandmother's funeral last winter. I went to Big Bend with Donnie in March on a long weekend, and we drove past the gas station on the way back, and I did not look at it as we passed. The gas station is closed now, by the way. Russ sold the property to a man who tore the building down and put up a propane and water resupply station for ranchers, with no convenience store, no employee on site, no bathroom. I do not know if that was an accident. I do know that the road still goes through. I do know that other places on other roads are still open. A month ago, on a Tuesday, I worked an afternoon shift at the gallery. We had an opening that night for a young painter from Houston, a woman named Imelda, whose work was good. The gallery was busy. People came and went. The bell rang clean every time. Around 4 in the afternoon, an older woman came in. She was maybe 70, white hair, pulled back, a long linen dress. Strong forearms. She looked at the paintings carefully. She looked at me, while I sat at the small reception desk, even more carefully. She came over. She bought a small print, $20, one of the cheap reproductions we keep in a flat file by the door. She paid in cash. She didn't leave. She stood there for a moment, with the print in her hand, looking at me. She said, "I'm sorry, have we met?" I said, "I don't think so." She said, "Did you ever work the night shift at a gas station on 385 west of Marathon?" My hand went cold around the pen I was holding. I said, "Yes." She said, "I thought I recognized you. I used to drive a rig through there. About 40 years on that road. I retired 2 summers ago." I said, Etta? She smiled. She said, Mara, I want to tell you what I felt. I felt for one moment that the world was very small and very kind. I felt that there was at least one other person alive who knew what I knew and had carried it for 40 years without becoming hard, and was now standing in front of me in a quiet gallery in Austin on a Tuesday afternoon, buying a $20 print. She put her hand on mine on the desk. Her hand was warm and a little dry and very steady. She said, You made it out. I always wonder with the ones who stay. I always wonder. I said, I don't know if I made it out. She said, Honey, listen, you did. The ones who didn't, don't paint. Don't open galleries. Don't fall in love. Don't have somebody waiting for them at home. You did. I can tell. I started crying, quietly. The other gallery visitors didn't notice. Etta didn't make a thing of it. She kept her hand on mine until I was done. She said, I'm going to go home. I live up in Dripping Springs now. I have a vegetable garden. She paused. She said, Mind your bells, Mara. They keep working as long as you keep hanging them. She turned and walked toward the door. The bell over the gallery door rang as she pushed it. Clean. A clean ring. All the way through. She walked down the sidewalk and turned the corner and was gone. I sat at the desk for a long time. The next customer came in, eventually, a young man looking for a gift for his mother. The bell rang clean as he came in. He was kind. He bought a print. He left. The bell rang clean as he went out. I locked the gallery at 6, the way I do every Tuesday. I drove home through traffic in the soft Austin twilight. Donnie had made dinner, pasta and a green salad. We ate on the balcony. She asked me about my day. I said it was good. I told her about Imelda's opening. I didn't tell her about Etta. After dinner, I painted for 2 hours. In the corner of the apartment that I've made into a small studio, I'm working on a portrait of my sister. It's almost done. When I went to bed, Donnie was already asleep. I lay next to her in the dark and I listened to her breathe. And I listened to the city. The small distant sounds of cars and dogs and somebody 3 apartments away playing music. And I thought about the road, somewhere out there, in the west, still going. I thought about Etta in her vegetable garden in Dripping Springs. I thought about Hannah, and the phone that had rung in my hand, and the mother who had eventually stopped calling. I closed my eyes. I went to sleep. In the morning, when I unlocked the gallery for my afternoon shift, the first thing I did, before anything else, was reach up and check the bell. It was hanging right side up. I tested it with 2 fingers. It rang clean. I left it alone. I sat at the desk. I waited for the day's first customer. The bell would do its work.